Hello, everyone. The box says it's live. So, and I guess that was for the moment. We can't live in the present. How are you all doing? Man, look at everyone. Didn't expect everyone to be in here well, it's good to see everyone. Boy, Philip, critical thinker. Hello, how are you doing? Trust everyone is doing good. Tuesday. And it is a beautiful day here in Colorado. Fall has arrived for serious cold front, and it feels great. I guess in my DNA, I guess my ancestors come from someplace that was, let's say, a lot less heat and humidity. So, Raven Wolf, good to see you. Hello, Karen, Queen of Quartz. How are you doing? Blue Angel, Karen. So, what is going on in the world? I have a question for everyone. So, we know something is going on. I mean, you really don't even have to be awake or aware. You could just simply be a student of anthropology, a student of social media, student, whatever it is in even the humanities. Hello, Dave. How you doing? Jacqueline, good to see you. So my question is this, and follow me on this. When we began to see the suppression of knowledge, and I contend that took place right around 3rd century. Actually, 4th century would be about 324, 319, when Constantine took over. And it was from that point that the religion was basically hijacked, stolen, and became a political force that was wrapped within the enigma of a religion. And I contend that if you look over the last 2,000 years of what I would call the modern era for man, that we saw a suppression of knowledge. We saw the intellect, and I'd say the spiritual aspect of our species decline. And it was suppressed for nearly 2 millennia. And now, because of man's ingenious ability to imitate the Creator, has created from his own imagination, much as we are the imagination of God, where we developed now a assistant, be the word, to help us remember. Because our species is inherently plagued with the faultiness of amnesia. We can't remember our past. And it has presented a problem. So today, where we now have rapid access to the knowledges that were kept secret, and whether it be cults, societies, whatever, that with now the brilliance of knowledge coming forth, that we find ourselves in a very interesting point in our development. My question is, are we seeing the postmodern Western culture coming to an end because of the rebirth or the recently ability to acquire the hidden knowledge, such as what we're reading with the Kybalion? the three initiates. I just contend that because I don't know about you, but hello, Brian. How are you doing, my friend? This book has profoundly changed me. And I'll just lay it out for you. I wake up quoting the 7 principles. And then I am now getting to the point where I can actually summarize each one. When I spend time meditating, same thing. I see the 7 principles. When I look outside my window, I see these principles everywhere. Case in point, today, while I was making tea and preparing for dinner tonight, I'm making homemade rolls. Anyway, I looked at my spoon, and here's my spoon right here. Now, isn't it odd that when you look at this way, right? But when I turn it this way, everything is upside down. Here, I merely get a distorted view of my reality, but it's still my plane of reality. But when I turn the spoon inward, this is no longer my plane of reality. My plane of reality has now been inverted. Isn't that odd? Meditate on that. I found myself 15 minutes, I lost time just meditating on it. I can see 2 entirely different realities, excuse me, on the same plane. I don't know about you, but I find that remarkable. Okay, maybe it's just me, but I'm telling you, things change. Someone said I'd never looked at that. Isn't it odd how before us we have such mysteries that we just overlook? Weird, I'll tell you. Yeah, Karen, Queen of Quartz, it is, isn't it? It shows the duality, folks. Karen got it. And the thing about it is I can see it. I can meditate and my mind can suddenly begin to connect 2, 3, 4 of the principles. I can see the principle of correspondence. I can see the principle of polarity. I can see the principle of vibration. I can see the principle of cause and effect. Something as simple as a spoon, folks, can take you places that I am convinced by reading this words. And by the way, I just want to say thank you for all the emails. People are, I'm a little overwhelmed, to be candid with you, that so many, even when I mess up words, and I do that, people don't realize is that in 94, I contracted meningitis and Lyme disease, was in a coma for 8 days. I had to teach myself basically how to speak again. You know, it was part of the paralysis, but so it's still, you know, one of those lingering things. You just learn, adapt, and you move on. So it just goes to show you that we're learning something. And I believe that as we progress and we continue to speak these words, it's a vibration, it's a frequency, it's a rhythm, and we're learning. By the way, Friday night, I'm going to have Anja on. I'm really looking forward to this. Anja is a practicing witch, and of which I think is pretty cool. I think we need to have understanding because we all live in a spellcast world. Why do you think they call it spelling? Here's something, and before we get into it, into our reading today, how many of you watched Jeff Doherty and I? Oh, I guess it's been, I'd say 5 weeks ago, when I told him I had come across, in fact, I read The Rite of Saturn. And in that rite, as I read it aloud while our show was going on, it says that Saturn is the home of the Elohim called Yahweh. Now, I just got a hold of a book. By the way, it's in a PDF form. I'm not going to spend $6,000 for the few remaining, apparently original copies that are out there. But the Rings of Saturn, I think it's, the Ring Makers of Saturn, excuse me. And I want to show a quick video. I don't know how many of you've seen this, from Paula Gilly, I believe is her name. And let me pull this up, folks, because I am looking at this from a different perspective. I'm looking at this from the perspective of, I think there is something more going on here on the deity level. And so, and by the way, go over and subscribe to her channel. I think diligence should be rewarded and admired. And anyone who's going to do this. So here is her capture of Saturn. Beautiful telescope, beautiful camera work. And watch what happens if you haven't seen this. And just wait for it. I could do the Jeopardy song, but that wouldn't be any fun. Although I'd love to take on Alex Trebek. So as he pulls this up, she's going to pull the scope. You tell me. You know, Tyler over on Secure Keem 10 on his video gave a pretty good explanation. Saturn has befuddled our imagination. When I see this video, I am drawn back to scenes from the alien sky that where Saturn was our sun at one time. So I don't know what's going on here, but that's planetary size beams going out. Now, the book, and there, Paula Gilly's channel, go there and subscribe. Paula, high five. Love to have you on. Outstanding work. So, what's going on? I'm not sure. Don't know. Something is. I contend that we have what we're going to learn in the Kabbalah. I mean, not the Kabbalah. There we go. Boy, that was a Freudian slip, wasn't it? The Kybalion is that life, sentient beings, intelligent beings, beings that live on a flat plane, beings that live on different planes, beings that have the ability to, and they don't like it, some of them, to descend back down to the lower planes. Now, if there is a race, a species of bipedals, humanids, that look like us, or we look like them, that have conquered space. And it doesn't surprise me. Many of the systems that we know from the captured craft is that they're biointegrated. They use thought. And years and years ago, I actually wrote a article, Speed at the Thought. Not the speed of light, but the speed of thought. Dune, how many of you remember that movie? When they would invoke the spice. And what the spice did was literally transmute you from one point merely at the thought into another region of space. So yeah, there we go. Let me get back over here. So anyway, pretty weird, eh? I think, and I am not prophesying, something tells me, folks, our momentary lull in our species development, I think it's going to get more interesting. We become more dangerous the more knowledge that we acquire. And when we start waking up and shake off the dross that basically encased our thoughts, and that rhema, that ray of light that comes to the spirit mind, activates something, folks. It activates. And I do believe that Miles, way too much truth in the Dune novels. I'll tell you what. Hello, Desert Rose. How are you doing? David Castle, good to see you. Skies Above, how are you doing? Yeah, that's a heavy series. I tell you, the things that we have marveled at the most, people like Gene Roddenberry, I have no doubt that Gene was plugged into something. I don't know what. Probably plugged into the same thing that people like Paul McCartney, Van Morrison, I can just think of a number of great musicians and writers that say they got plugged into something. Paul McCartney, I've heard him say it numerous times. Don't know where it come from, mate. Just was there, and next thing I know, it was just coming down. Yeah. Kenneth says I'm going to mutate into the Hulk. Okay, Claudette, how are you doing? Yeah, Dune showed many of the things we needed to see. I'm absolutely a 100%. If you have the ability with Netflix, I have the DVD. Get it. It's one of those that if you watch, the thing that that got me about Paul Atreides was that Paul realized that fear was the mind killer. And that stuck with me the first time I said it, and I said, bingo. Fear is the mind killer. And that's why the archons, the overlords, those who have taken positions above us, have did their damnedest to keep us ignorant and in fear. Listen, if you're completely persuaded into the concept of the afterlife through most of the religions of the world, I mean, I could see why you'd be afraid of death. Who the hell would want to go there? No pun intended, folks. Yeah, I mean, this is what I love about this knowledge. It frees you. As my meditation that I sent out, did a little video. That was a gift to everyone. Though someone needed to hear that. You know, it sucks that when things happen, and they do happen. But no matter how we end the day or start the day with, all of us are on the mind of the all. God, a Tom, whatever the name may be. And that's as far out, folks. That right there alone should end any thought of fear when we pass on. I tell you what it is, folks. They do not want you to ascend to the next level. And there are levels. I mean, we've proven this in mathematics. We've proved it in quantum physics. We know that there are different dimensions, different planes of reality. We're going to learn what planes really mean. And when I use the term reality, we use the term according to the Kybalion, which means the sustainable reality. And that's the key, the sustainable reality. So are we seeing something happening now on this distant, as Dr. Albers rightly points out, was probably is a star. I don't think it's a planet. It, you know, each of us have our debates, but again, are we looking at something right in front of us that all we have to do is change the perspective and it comes into full manifestation in light? I don't know. Someone wrote me and said, where are you getting all these downloads at? I think I got some freaking extension cord somewhere plugged in. Yes, we are strong enough to know thyself. Desert Rose, this is the point. I wrote a response to someone in the comments of yesterday's show that said, well, I've broken a unwritten code by bringing this to the public. And no, if anything, R. Wayne Steiger is living exactly to the 7 principles. I'd be living exactly in the principle of polarity. If something has been hidden, then if I take that and follow it, means that it should be unhidden. That's where the 7 principles comes in and helps solve those type of paradoxes. And I think that we are mature enough as a species to shake off the dross, the mythos, the superstitions of our ancestors. They were smart in other areas, granted, but we have to give credit where credit is due. We've done quite a bit in this modern age. Now, we may not know how to handle it as the children that our leaders apparently are. I just contend that they were all spoiled brats. What they need is their butts spanked as they should have been when they were children, and tell them to quit the bickering and get on with being a leader. Anyway, I digress. The previous statement was, so let's get into this, man. I mean, seriously, let's start sharing the wisdom. By the way, before I end it, we're going to look at a book that we're going to read as well. So here we go, folks. Let's go. We stopped with the principle of rhythm. Everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. The pendulum swings, manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates. Boy, I want to say this to somebody. You're thinking that your pendulum has been so far negative in your life, and you're hearing this, and you're trying to rationalize the information, but you're asking yourself, well, my life seems to be so far to the left. When does it start obeying the other principles? Well, I have this to say to you. You don't know where you are on that pendulum, but I'm going to show you what we've learned already. By vibration, that pendulum will begin to swing the other way. This principle embodies the truth that in everything there is manifested a measure motion to and fro, a flow and inflow, a swing backwards and forwards, a pendulum-like moment, a tide-like ebb and flow, a high tide and low tide, between the two poles, which exist in accordance with the principle of polarity described a moment ago. That, folks, and I'm going to tell you, once you get it into your mind, that's where the magic happens. Because you alone can invoke the principles. And again, folks, wherever this has been taught, prosperity has followed. And I just don't mean financial prosperity. I think there's a prosperity of the soul and the spirit. And when those two begin to prosper and imbalance, it changes your whole physical life. There is always an action and a reaction, an advance and a retreat, a rising and a sinking. This is in the affairs of the universe: suns, worlds, men, animals, mind, energy, and matter. This law is manifested in the creation and destruction of worlds, in the rise and fall of nations, in the life of all things, and finally, in the mental states of man. And it is with this latter that the Hermeticists find the understanding of the principles most important. The Hermeticists all have grasped this principle, finding its universal application, and have also discovered certain means to overcome its effect in themselves by the use of the appropriate formulas and methods. See, most of us lack, well, I would say all of us, we just weren't given the formulas. We've been literally walking around with the keys in our hands, we don't know where lock to put it into. How does the lock work? You ever thought about that? We all take it so easy. Imagine if you were never in a place where there was a lock and you hand the person the key, and what they have before them are doorknobs, door locks. What does he do with it? What does she do with it? They apply the mental law of naturalization. They cannot annul the principle or cause it to cease its operation, but they have learned how to escape its effects upon themselves to a certain degree, depending on the mastery of the principle. Mastery. When I filled out my application, I said, "You accept me as an adapt. I will certainly tell you I shall aspire to a master." They have learned how to use it instead of being used by it. Now that right there is worth the price of admission today. And the mission is free. Seriously. When you begin to use the power for yourself instead of being used by the power, that's where things change in life. In this and similar methods consists the art of the Hermeticist. The master of Hermetics polarizes himself at the point at which he desires to rest, and then neutralizes the rhythmic swing of the pendulum, which would tend to carry him to the other pole. All individuals who have attained any degree of self-mastery do this to a certain degree, more or less unconsciously, but the master does this consciously and by the use of his will, and attains a degree of poise and mental firmness almost impossible of belief on the part of the masses who are swung back and forth like a pendulum. See, that's why I left politics. So this is insanity. What I found out, they're all the same party, but they love playing the game like bouncing you in a pinball machine, back and forth, back and forth. We say no. You can stop the pendulum. This is what it's saying to you. You just need to know how. Let he who have ears hear. This principle and that of polarity have been closely studied by the Hermeticists, and the methods of counteracting, neutralizing, and using them form an important part of the Hermetic mental alchemy. Number 6, the principle of cause and effect. From the Kybalion, every cause has its effect, and every effect has its cause. Everything happens according to law. Chance is but a name for law not recognized. There are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law. Now, isn't it amazing how far this knowledge goes back? I've traced it in this book here. You can actually find we've traced it back to, oh, good Lord, I think about BCE, I believe that's what they're saying. But you know, when I see this, isn't this the same thing with Newton? The whole Newtonian theory? Cause and effect? The laws of gravity? I mean, I could just go on and on. It's right there. Can't you see it? It's right there. Talk about speed, propulsion. Einstein was wrong. He says that nothing can get to C. I say he's wrong. We just haven't looked at it. Again, if you can channel the power of mind and thought, well, if you've advanced past multiple C's. This principle embodies the fact that there is a cause for every effect, an effect for every cause. It explains that everything happens according to law, that nothing ever merely happens, that there is no such thing as chance, that while there are various planes of cause and effect, the higher dominating the lower planes, still nothing ever entirely escapes the law. The Hermeticist understands the art and methods of the rising above the ordinary plane of cause and effect to a certain degree, and by mentally rising to a higher plane, they become causers instead of effects. What have you been all your life? The masses of people are carried along, obedient to environment, the wills and desires of others stronger than themselves, heredity, suggestion, and other outward causes moving them about like pawns on a chessboard of life. All right, who's felt like that? Come on, come on. Yeah. We felt like pawns, but we always wanted to be the queen or the king. I always want to be the queen. Don't give me any kind of snide remarks, because come on, the queen had mastery over the whole board. The king could only go one way at a time. Wow. What an epiphany on that one, eh? But the masters rising to the plane above dominate their moods, characters, qualities, and powers, as well as the environment surrounding them, and become masters, movers instead of pawns. That's a Freudian slip, but that was perfect. They help to play the game of life instead of being played, and move about by other wills and environment. They use the principle instead of being its tools. The masters obey the causation of the higher planes, but they help to rule on their own plane. In this statement, there is condensed a wealth of hermetic knowledge. Let him read who can. Folks, if you meditated just on this, if you meditated on this for 21 days and laid the synaptic pathway in your brain, in your consciousness, I dare say you would go to the head of the class, what would seem almost like overnight in your own environment. Allow me, please. You know, those exotic spices, they were only reserved for the gods. I'm glad they found their home in us. The principle of gender. Gender is in everything. Everything has a masculine and feminine principles. Gender manifests on all planes, the Kybalion. The principle embodies the truth that there is gender manifested in everything, the masculine and feminine principles ever at work. This is true not only of the physical plane, but of the mental and even spiritual planes. On the physical plane, the principle manifests as sex. On the higher plane, it takes higher forms. But the principle is ever the same. No creation, physical, mental, or spiritual, is possible without this principle. An understanding of its laws will throw light on many a subject that has perplexed the minds of men. The principle of gender works ever in the direction of generation, regeneration, and creation. Everything and every person, are you ready for this, folks? Contains the two elements or principles, or this great principle within it, him or her. Every male thing has the female element also. Every female contains also the male principle. If you would understand the philosophy of mental and spiritual creation, generation, and regeneration, you must understand and study this Hermetic principle. It contains the solution of many mysteries of life. We caution you that this principle has no reference to the many base, pernicious, and degrading lustful theories, teachings, and practices which are taught under fanciful titles and which are prostitution of the great natural principle of gender. Such base revivals of ancient infamous forms of phallicism tend to ruin mind, body, and soul. And the Hermetic philosophy has ever sounded the warning note against these degraded teachings, which tend toward lust, lasciviousness, and perversion of nature's principles. If you seek such teachings, you must go elsewhere for them. Hermeticism contains nothing for you along these lines. To the pure, all things are pure. To the base, all things are base. Well, I can't add anything to that. Chapter 3, Mental Transmutation. Here we go, folks. Mind, as well as metals and elements, may be transmuted from state to state, degree to degree, condition to condition, pole to pole, vibration to vibration. True Hermetic transmutation is a mental art, the Kybalion. I love this stuff. I feel like I'm in the midst of I had a dream once, been decades ago, but I was walking along like a enclosed bridge, and I was entering into this huge, huge building. It was old though, but yet it was somehow immaculate on the inside. And I remember walking down these huge halls, and I came to this room, and it was the strangest thing because it was like I walked into like a stadium, but it was enclosed, and there was all this treasure everywhere. I wonder if it was telling me something. As we have stated, the Hermeticists were the original alchemists. astrologers, and psychologists. Hermes having been the founder of these schools of thought. From astrology has grown modern astronomy. From alchemy has grown modern chemistry. And from the mystic psychology has grown the modern psychology of the schools. But it must be supposed that the ancients were ignorant of that which the modern schools suppose to be their exclusive and special property. The records engraved on the stones of ancient Egypt show conclusively that the ancients had a full, comprehensive knowledge of astronomy. Yeah, we know that. The very building of the pyramids showing that the connection between their design and the study of the astronomical science. We still haven't figured out how they done it. Still just trying to figure out what they were meaning, although there's been lots of speculation on that. Nor were they ignorant of chemistry. Well, we know that as well. I have a production, I haven't finished it, it's still on the storyboard, but talking about the Egyptian blue ink. Nor were they ignorant of chemistry, for the fragments of the ancient writings show that they were acquainted with the chemical properties of things. In fact, the ancient theories regarding physics are being slowly verified by the latest discoveries of modern science, notably those relating to the constitution of matter. Listen, those cats mummified people. We don't do it today. Nor must it be supposed that they were ignorant of the so-called modern discoveries of psychology. On the contrary, the Egyptians were especially skilled in the science of psychology, particularly in the branches that the modern schools ignore, but which nevertheless are being uncovered under the name of psychic science, which is perplexing the psychologists of today and making them reluctantly admit that, well, there may be something in it after all. Oh, gee. When did they stop the press for that one? The truth is that beneath the material chemistry, astronomy, and psychology, that is, the psychology in its phase of brain action, the ancients possessed a knowledge of transcendental astronomy, called astrology, transcendental chemistry, called alchemy, and transcendental psychology, called mystic psychology. They possessed the inner knowledge as well as the outer knowledge, the latter alone being possessed by modern science. Among the many secret branches of knowledge possessed by the Hermeticists were that known as mental transmutation, which forms the subject matter of this lesson. Transmutation is a term usually employed to designate the ancient art of the transmutation of metals, particularly of the base metals into gold. The word transmute means to change from one nature, form, or substance into another, to transform, Webster's Dictionary. And accordingly, mental transmutation means the art of changing and transforming mental states, forms, and condition into others. So you may see that mental transmutation is the art of mental chemistry, if you like the term, a form of practical mystic psychology. I contend that's what witchcraft is. It's nothing more than mystic psychology. But this means far more than appears on the surface. Transmutation, alchemy, or chemistry on the mental plane is important enough in its effects to be sure. And if the art stopped there, it would still be one of the most important branches of study known to man. But this is only the beginning, and let us see why. The first of the 7 Hermetic principles is the principle of mentalism, the axiom of which is the all is mind. The universe is mental. I woke up thinking this, folks. The universe is mental. I can't, and I'll go on. Which means that the underlying reality of the universe is mind. and the universe itself is mental. That is, existing in the mind of the all. We shall consider this principle in succeeding lessons, but let us see the effect of the principle if it be assumed to be true. If the universe is mental in its nature, then mental transmutation must be the art of changing the conditions of the universe along the lines of matter, force, and mind. So you see, therefore, that mental transmutation is really the magic of which the ancients writers had so much to say in their mystical works, and about which they gave so few practical instructions. I can imagine why. If all be mental, then the art which enables one to transmute mental conditions must be rendered the master, the controller of material conditions, as well as those ordinarily called mental. A master. As a matter of fact, none but advanced mental alchemists have been able to attain the degree of power necessary to control the grosser physical conditions, such as control of the elements of nature, the production or sensation of tempests, the production and sensation of earthquakes, and the other great physical phenomena. But that such men have existed and do exist today is a matter of earnest belief to all advanced occultists of all schools. They're still walking amongst us. I think they're listening to us. That the masters exist and have these powers, and the best teachers assure their students, having had experiences which justify them in such belief and statements. These masters do not make public expositions of their powers, but seek seclusion from the crowds of men in order to better work their may along the path of attainment. So they're working on their path as well. We mention their existence at this point merely to call your attention to the fact that their power is entirely mental and operates along the lines of higher mental transmutation under the Hermetic principle of mentalism. The universe is mental, the Kybalion. But students and Hermeticists of lesser degree than masters, the initiates and teachers, are able to freely work along the mental plane in mental transmutation. In fact, all that we call psychic phenomenon, mental influence, mental science, new thought phenomenon, etc., operates along the same general lines. For there is but one principle involved, no matter by what name the phenomenon is called. The student and practitioner of mental transmutation works among the mental plane, transmuting mental conditions, states, into others according to various formulas, more or less efficacious. The various treatments, affirmations, denials, etc., of the school of mental science are but formulas, often quite imperfect and unscientific, of the Hermetic art. The majority of modern practitioners are quite ignorant compared to the ancient masters, for they lack the fundamental knowledge upon which the work is based. Not only may the mental states, etc., of oneself be changed or transmuted by Hermetic methods, but also the states of others may be, and are, constantly transmuted in the same way, usually unconsciously, but often consciously by some understanding the laws and principles, in case where the people affected are not informed of the principles of self-protection. Folks, that's loaded right there. You know, I remember doing a show with Heidi and Vandenberg and Jenny Moonstone talking about psychic vampires. I just nailed it right there, folks. They exist. Now, psychic vampire, of course, is a metaphor. But nevertheless, they exist. We've all had them in our lives. People who, when you're around them, they just drain the crap out of you. I mean, you feel like you've ran a marathon. Yeah. And then they end up living rent-free in the penthouse. Yeah. And more than this, as many students and practitioners of modern mental science know, every material condition, depending upon the minds of other people, may be changed or transmuted in accordance with the earnest desire, will, and treatments of person desiring changed conditions of life. Wow. Definitely go on a tangent on that one. The public are so generally informed regarding these things at present that we do not deem it necessary to mention the same at length. Our purpose at this point being merely to show the Hermetic principle and art underlying all of these various forms of practice, good and evil, for the force can be used in opposite directions according to the Hermetic principle of polarity. In this little book, we shall state the basic principles of mental transmutation, that all who read may grasp the underlying principles and thus possess the master key that will unlock the many doors of the principle of polarity. We shall now proceed to a consideration of the first of the Hermetic 7 principles, the principles of mentalism, in which is explained the truth that the all is mind, the universe is mental. In the words of the Kybalion, we ask the close attention and careful study of this great principle on the part of our students, for it is really the basic principle of the whole Hermetic philosophy and, of course, the Hermetic art of transmutation. And we're going to end it right there. Pick up in chapter 5. We're going really quick through this. Let me get this out of here. I don't know about you folks, but this is amazing knowledge. I think it can reverse even aging. I know that may sound absolutely preposterous, but I believe these bodies can be charged with a life force that will make us much more younger. I'm believing this. It doesn't surprise me. If the principles be principles at all, then it would state that that is purpose, and even living within the laws of generation, regeneration. It's quite amazing. I don't know about you, but this is the kind of stuff that I know you folks are getting it. We're here not by chance. Every one of you watching, everyone in the chat room, everyone that will be watching this. Nothing happens by circumstance. And I think there is a calling. And I think that the knowledge is going to only increase. I think the intensity, the vibration is increasing. And I'm going to think that as we begin to see on a tree, every vein going to every branch, reaching all the way to every leaf, and from the leaf to the branch to the trunk, there is a vibration that's increasing. We've seen it in our planet, the Schumann resonance. It's changed, increasing. And if we can contend that something's happening in our solar system, listen, I think Paula caught something. I mean, and it doesn't surprise me. There is something moving us all, folks, and I think it means good for us. I think it is, in fact, this positive wave that so many of us, I think, have been waiting for. I think it's here. I think many of us are feeling the effects. It's just my take. It's my opinion. And, you know, now the Hermetic Code talks about opinion is between ignorance and knowledge. so, so we have to just kind of put that in the proper perspective. I'll tell you what, folks, you've got to learn to laugh. You've got to learn to laugh. And, you know, you're a triune being. You got three beings inside of you, and, you know, they like laughing too. So you just, you know, it's that step of falling in love with yourself, not in a narcissistic way, but in a divine way. It allows the divine in you to experience joy. It's all too custom for sadness. That we're well versed with. It's the joy that we seem to have an adversity to. And if there's so little joy, but I tell you what, we're finding the keys to how to begin to generate joy abundantly. And that begins to inoculate us against these counter forces and countermeasures. We're finding our own defense force here. And as we unite in fellowship with one and another, as we begin to bond together in this unity, folks, that's something that sends vibrations out to the universe. And I believe that those vibrations are picked up by other beings. Just my theory. All right, folks, I do appreciate every one of you. Thank you all for being here. We'll pick this up tomorrow. A lot of energy today. Man, I don't know about you, but I've been sitting here like I'm almost, you know, like there's this tingling all over. Yeah. So welcome, everyone. Again, thank you for being here. You're a delight. Thank you. You brought joy into my life. I hope I have returned the gift back into yours. Be good to yourselves. We will see you tomorrow. All righty, folks. Bye-bye.